My friend Martin and I just got back from watching Transformers Rise of the Beast at theaters. I was going to record a review, but I thought it'd be more fun to record a conversation with Martin because Martin hosts a movie podcast. Tell him about it.
Yeah, Secret Handshake Cinema. We do movies that you make friends over, or you have a friend, and you're like, oh, I think you'd love this random movie. And it's more about the communal nature of movie watching. And so definitely, I think, apt to talk about a movie with a friend and a big blockbuster Transformers movie at that.
Yes, I'm all about the blockbuster Transformers movies. Let's start with just the overall good, I think. So for me, the stuff that really stood out about this movie was Optimus. So they really tried to give Optimus like a character arc. It was great to hear, like, it's great to have that for Peter Cullen, I think. Like,
actually have a character.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, he's just screaming like, I'll kill you, get out of my way, or whatever in all the Bay movies. And in this one, he's actually like going through something. And even though it's kind of like there's a little bit of like telling, not showing, where the characters are like, Optimus feels this or whatever. But I was still like, I was for it, you know? Like, I appreciated it. So Optimus's character arc was a big standout to me. The other big things that stood out to me were just really like how much screen time all of the Transformers had.
Yeah.
Like, I know the fandom always wants more and more Transformers, and they always dream of like a Transformers only movie. And I always
just
say,
on
like,
Cybertron, no humans.
Yeah, and I always like, yeah, it could be cool. I mean, we're actually getting that with the animated movie supposedly next year.
Exactly.
Bots never give up.
I don't know if the camera picked that up, but self-driving Optimus just
he's here lending back up.
Yes.
And I've never seen him before, and I'm like totally geeking out.
Yeah.
Heck yes.
Anyways, yeah, I was really impressed with how much screen time the Transformers had. They had there's a lot of Transformers action and lore, and just like Scourge felt like a real villain.
Yeah.
Primal felt like he had his time. Primal and Airraiser had a relationship. Like, it was all there. Yeah, what stood out to you was like the positive stuff.
Oh, a lot actually. I agree. I think and I really like I love the first Transformers from 2007.
Yeah.
And I really like Dark of the Moon from 2011. And while I love them, I think the main thing that holds them back is like the one-notedness of the Transformers. One of the things that holds them back. And honestly, I think Shia LaBeouf is a big part of that. And I'll get to that why I like this movie more as well, because I think the lead character is much more likable and much more nuanced than Sam Witwicky in the other films. But that you have, like you were saying, there's an arc for Optimus, and like he's not a human hater, but it starts out that he is very like, we can't trust them. It's very much like I have to look out for my own. And I thought that was really cool about this film is like Bay, all his films. I'm a big Michael Bay fan as a filmmaker. I mean, The Rock is one of my favorite action films. I think Ambulance last year was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Can I cuss on this? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure. The thing about Bay is his stuff goes so militaristic, you know, and it's so like, it's like literally sponsored by like the U.S. military, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very like jingoistic and like really like gung ho. And he says this general BS like, we are about freedom and the Decepticons love tyranny. So it's like so like the right wing's like dream of like how they view terrorism.
Right. Yeah.
And this one is about like actually a very, I think, progressive idea of the way that like, I don't want to get too deep on this, but the way that like systems of oppression separate us. So it's like, oh no, you all need to fight amongst yourselves, because if you come together, you're gonna take down the oppressive system. Like that's like the message of the movie is is like the three groups all are kind of looking out for their own purposes, and them coming together. Again, that's reading too deep probably into this movie. But I think I prefer that if that's the underlying message for kids to watch, I much prefer that to the general like Fox News like thing of the not to get too political.
No,
But
just
I like that.
Just the like sacrificial aspect of it for me is just like A, do I trust humans? Like, can I trust this other group to take care of me is important. But B, like like I will sacrifice myself to help them, or maybe vice versa. Like, and we trust each other for that, and because we trust each other for that, we're that much better. Like, it's a good message for today too, just because of like the divisiveness of everything. Like, you have to work together, or nothing will ever get done ever.
Absolutely, and that relates to the main character as well. I mean, Noah, Anthony Ramos is, I really liked him honestly. So I think the first time I saw him was Star is Born, and I was like, I really like this actor, and he's great in The Heights. He's very talented in a lot of ways, and I love that it has such a great like screenplay structure. Like the first act is like really amazing. Like there's barely it's great as much as you're saying. There's a lot of Transformers. There's like none in the first act except for the opening scene.
Yeah.
And it really sets the scene of he and Elena.
Yeah.
And they're both these like people who are like trying to get ahead. She is like disrespected. Obviously, she knows more than like her boss. She's an intern at the museum. But, like she's much more capable.
Yeah.
And he is this guy who's like just trying to make ends meet for his family. It's not the most like it's definitely like a trope, but it works and he plays it well. And I think his relationship with his brother is like very realistic compared to Sam in the beginning of the first Transformers. Like, I want a car.
Yeah.
I like that girl. Like that was much more the suburban, like they were going for that Spielberg-y.
Yes.
Like a boy in his car is basically,
Yeah,
they mention E.T. a lot in this. That's kind of the joke to me is like Spielberg produced the original. And that feels like a Spielberg setup of like a boy in the suburbs.
Totally, yeah. I mean,
And it's like maybe like the worst thing I have to worry about is like a bully and not getting a date. This one's
Right.
like, no,
And now
we're
it's
gonna get freaking evicted.
The log line is like, a boy has much bigger things to worry about than his date because a giant alien roars around or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And
yeah,
it's also like, and I don't hate Shia LaBeouf. I mean, he's always had a lot of problems off camera, but like his. No. Like you watch that and it's just like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
And Anthony Ramos is just like really charming in this.
Yeah.
He sells it. The whole thing of him stealing the car is a great scene.
Yeah.
It's just like an actual car chase, like not a CGI car chase.
Yeah.
A car chase in New York City. Like
Yeah.
we do not see that anymore.
Yeah.
Like that was awesome.
Yeah, it was a natural way to introduce the subject material to Transformers. Like, okay, yeah, he's stealing a car and Transformers are cars. Like it works. Yeah, I agree. It definitely was. If there's one kind of negative thing for me, it was like sitting through the tropes being set up because they were so tropey that I was like, all right, just get to the point because I know what this whole scene is for. It's just to get them out the door to this place or whatever. But that's the kind of part that I would like smooth over if I were like, I think could have been smooth over just a little bit. But I agree, it definitely worked, and I liked that I think they successfully applied it to the franchise. Like
absolutely, and at least it's there. You know, because like it's like the Bay films, they're so like the humor is so garish, and it's so like frat boy stuff, and it's just like really like sexual jokes and stuff, and like that's a lot of the kind of complaints. A lot of my I have like you, I have some friends who are like really huge Transformers fans. Like I like Transformers, like I have a working knowledge, you know, of them, and I grew up in the '80s. My brother, you know, had the original Optimus Prime. Like we collected them, but for me, it should be more, I think, like not kid friendly, but more like general audience friendly. And the Michael Bay ones, there's stuff where it's like
super raunchy.
What kind of joke is that? I mean, especially like Revenge of the Fallen has like some really like the whole truck nuts thing. We were joking about that earlier. You know, it's like come on, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm immature, but come on, man.
It's weird because it obviously worked for a little bit. The movie's
totally
made billions of dollars.
I'm not saying he did it wrong, you know, but yeah.
And I do. Yeah, I'm always sort of torn about that because it's like what worked. It put this franchise that I love like into new heights. Like we got so much stuff that we would never got if it didn't land the way it landed. And I remember being in football practice in 7th grade, and they were like, but at that point I was aware of like I'm not that cool for still liking Transformers as much as I do, so I'm not gonna like talk about it. These kids are growing out of it. But I was hearing kids in the football team joke about like the Sam masturbation scene. They thought it was so funny.
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, like this movie made these people who are like otherwise way too cool for like the anime version I'm watching on TV.
You're right, yeah.
To actually like it. But yeah, it's definitely refreshing. Like I feel like if we're gonna reboot it and try again and like make a new movie as this one was, this is what I wanted. Like to try something else, to stray away from it and be family friendly.
Absolutely.
And I can totally imagine like some kid watching this and like loving Mirage and being like, I want to fight alongside Optimus Prime. Like as much as the Mirage suit was a little bit cheesy for me when it first came on, I was like, this is gonna like make some kid's world to be like, it's literally showing you like you and Optimus Prime side by side, you know?
Yes, it very much, and he's active versus like being in the fray, like Sam yelling and screaming while things blow up around him.
Yeah, or being like the only other thing you ever see in the franchise, I think, is like hacker kid at a computer being like, I'm gonna hack into Decepticon's mainframe. Okay, Optimus, go in, the door's open or whatever. Like, and it's like, okay, cool, like. We've seen Iron Man for like 10 years now. I can buy that there's like a metal suit that's going to let this guy get thrown around and play tough with the Transformers. Like, sure.
Yes.
What about it stood out to you as could have been improved? Could have been better?
Honestly, I honestly don't have a lot for that because I'm I'm definitely of the mind that if a film like does what it sets out to do,
Yeah.
it's a success.
Yeah.
And I think like in general it was. I will say like a lot of these films, and like I'm the millionth person to say this, it's like when it enters Skybeam territory at the end of a movie, it does become just like a mess of metal clinking together. Now it is a lot more, it's easier to follow than like some like the Michael Bay. I appreciate, and Bumblebee was the same way, where it was like you could actually follow the action more.
Yeah.
And I think like the Bay films even got clearer as they went on. Like the first Transformers was like, dude, like you literally push ILM to like do the hardest thing they ever done, and you're not even going to show their work.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, cause,
right,
like
yes.
it's so frustrating, and it's amazing.
Well,
Like
it's even harder for them to composite into the shaky camera that's sitting on the side of the road with like sparks flying. In the
yeah, I
screen.
mean, who tracked this stuff?
Yeah.
You know, like, or but you think about, I mean, I remember talking when I was in film school, like my professor was saying his big problem with the originals was that the Transformers had too many moving parts on them, and it's true. Like they were like these like when Optimus like first transforms in like the original, it's like literally like 10,000 moving parts that all like these gears, and you're like, his point was, where do you look, right? Like what's your point of focus, which you need in cinema, right? Of like, you know, even if it's at like, even if it's because of like where your depth of focus is, like where you're out of focus and where you're in focus, but like it was just like a mess of gears. These ones are much more closer to an anime video game, like simpler to kind of follow. Yeah. Like the legs are a big metal beam. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need it to be super intricate. It can be nicked and kind of scored by like battle, but like that's enough, right?
Yeah, for me this topic is the same as the humor, in which like I really did appreciate the perspective that the Bay films were going for, which is like these are aliens, so why should they all be like bipedal things? And I love that like in the second movie Devastator's like a hulking monster.
Yes.
RC's like a consciousness split amongst 3 bikes that look like unicycles or whatever. It's like, who's to say that she's like, you know, like, and I love that about like my girlfriend was joking like, oh, how do you know the Transformers are female? Because they all have like curves and they stand like this or whatever. And I was like, I love that Revenge of the Fallen just like RC's 3 unicycles now that they like don't even have legs and they like have distorted bodies or whatever. But yes, I also appreciate that this movie is definitely easier to follow. Like people are gonna walk out of this and actually have an idea of like what the bad guys look like. They all have, you know, 3 unique color schemes. I
they're toys you want to buy. I mean, you said that when we got out, and like I can't think of another series of films, especially like this one, where I was like, I haven't bought a Transformer since 2007, since the first movie. I went and bought, my buddy bought me a Barricade.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, sweet. I still have it. It's like a really great toy.
That's awesome.
And I hadn't had one since I was a kid. He goes, we should get one. My buddy Derek. And you and I both got to the movie tonight. You're like, man, I really want Scourge. I'm like, I want him too.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like how in the 80s, which is funny because like in the 80s, like that was the whole thing. They had all those laws about it that like cartoons shouldn't just be like commercials with stories,
right?
You know, but they ended up being like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Silverhawks, all that stuff was just like a delivery device for this new line of toys.
Yeah. Or the original 1986 movies literally just like clearing the shelves by killing all the characters and being like, here are the new toys on this fall, like buy these toys.
Totally.
It definitely succeeded there. One thing I wanted to talk about was like I remember thinking in like after every Transformers movie in 2007, 2009, there'd always be like fake leaked images of someone's like custom design of like Optimus Primal in the live action style. And I always roll my eyes and be like, they're not going to do live action Beast Wars, guys. Like, ever. I don't see how that would ever happen. Yeah. And like, I'm sitting here having just watched a live action Beast Wars movie. And it worked. It worked for me. Like, I'm pretty impressed by that. And I almost don't know how it worked or why I thought it was impossible back then. I need to think more about it, but
you know what it makes, you know, I think it was, I mean, not to like speak for you, but like it felt to me like when you watch like Iron Man and like the early films, or even, but then you're like, they're gonna do Thor because like the Iron Man felt so grounded, and they're like, wait, you're gonna go cosmic, and then they were gonna like, we're gonna have Thanos. I'm like, wait, you're actually gonna do that? Because in my mind, when I was younger, comic book films were so afraid of being ridiculous. Like they were ridiculous, but it was like X-Men was like they're all gonna wear black.
Yes,
You know,
that's right.
it was everything was so and I think the one that obviously pushed that was Spider-Man in '02, but still there was this like, we're not gonna go have space gods, we're not gonna have aliens, we're gonna be still on Earth. And about, you know, Raimi was goofy, but it was still very much like New York.
Yeah.
And there might be a little bit of that, right? Where it's like, no, like that is, it seems like too crazy. Like,
and we had the I was all about the Dark Knight trilogy back then, and that was like the peak of groundedness. Like,
yes,
everything in this is going to be like, if this was really happening, this is how it is, and we're going to strip out all the. There's no Mr. Freeze or anything like that. All the bad guys are humans that just have this, that, and that. And yeah, like I was talking about with the designs, like it felt like they had an attitude of like, everything here is real. Like, this is what real aliens would be like if you had to make a real alien. So
like, they're almost embarrassed to be doing it. It's that weird, it's that kind of like, well, don't laugh at us.
Yeah, exactly.
You
but
know?
I think the MCU has kind of evolved or devolved, depending on your perspective, to be like...
evolved in some ways, devolved in others.
Yes, to be really silly. I mean, like, I would consider like, I don't know, Thor, like some parts of Thor 3 to be like the best of the goofiness and stuff, like embracing like
the first Guardians, I think, too.
Yes, first Guardians. And then
which I didn't think they would do either. I'm like, you're gonna do a space opera?
Yeah.
Who knows Guardians
like
of the Galaxy?
Groot or Raccoon, Rocket Raccoon, yeah, exactly.
Like, there's no way.
Yeah, and they really embraced in this movie just like throwing you into the Beast planet at first, being like, these guys are from a different planet. There you go. That's why you've never heard of them before. Now they're on Earth, and you saw they had to escape somewhere. There you go. They're there. And they've got a MacGuffin that you're going to run into them because they're the keepers of this. Like, super smooth, and it worked. It worked.
Yeah, there's something that I kept thinking watching it, and I think one of the reasons I liked it, one of the best of the series, one of my favorites of the series, is that, like, again, like, growing up, like, comic book and, like, IP movies were few and far between.
Yeah.
Like, now it's, like, they'll scrape anything, right?
Yes.
And, like, it's, like, you know... As much as I loved Last of Us, I'm like, you're making a Last of Us show? Oh my god! That would have never happened in the past, right? And so now it's like anything you can think of, like
got Barbie coming out.
Yeah, Barbie, like they're gonna pick it up and do it.
We did Battleship already with Hasbro,
which I kind of like.
I know,
and a lot of this looked like Battleship. There's some of the stuff in it. Like his suit looked like the Battleship.
Dude, Battleship aged well, in my opinion.
I think it rules. I'm sorry, I think it's great
compared to like the green screen garbage of like Ant-Man 4 and stuff. Battleship goes hard. Like,
dude, it was so fun. I was thinking of Battleship tonight because I was like, I went alone to see it. I went to a double feature of that and Dark Shadows, and I enjoyed them both. And like, I thought no one else did. And I'm like, I had fun.
No, it's fun, yeah.
You know, but this one again, like, there was this time in the '90s where, not to keep being like I'm old, you know, but like, my brother and I would always be like, we'd be in Wizard magazine and be like fan casting for like X-Men, and we were just like, what movie are we finally gonna get? And but we had stuff like. The good stuff was like the Ninja Turtles movie, you know, and then the first couple. I like Secret of the Ooze too. I don't like Turtles in Time, but the beginning of this felt like a Turtles movie to me, where you spend some time with the humans. It's also in New York City. It's definitely like street level.
Yeah,
you know, it feels like a comic book world at the same time. It's like that. It's like Dick Tracy, The Shadow, all those movies that were just kind of like that era. Or even for me, like one of my favorites, which I know is not loved, is like Masters of the Universe, the movie. Like, that movie came out, and like I was the biggest, besides G.I. Joe, like He-Man is my favorite IP from growing up. Like, probably more He-Man for me than G.I. Joe. But like when that movie came out, I have complete blinders on for that movie.
Yeah,
like you could be, and it's not a good movie by all accounts. It's not good. I will never say a bad word about it.
Yeah.
I adore it. It's pure nostalgia. Like, it shoots right to my core. And like, this reminded me of that as well, where it was just like, setting the 90s really helped too. That's not accidental for them to be for my generation. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, we remember the early 90s. I think it's like, same thing with Bumblebee being in the 80s. It's like, oh, we know where our ticket buyers are not little kids. It's their parents. Yeah. You know?
The kids are just there to see Optimus throw his axe, and so
exactly,
it's like,
and the dad's like, "Oh, let's do it."
Yeah,
you know,
make the parents more comfortable by the familiar instead of the scary new world of smartphones and everything.
Absolutely, I'm all about it. I think it's a great idea. Versus the X-Men movies, like, screwed that up, where they were like, it's the 70s, it's the 80s, and it's the 90s, and they're all like by that account, like Michael Fassbender should be like way older.
Oh, and these movies. One thing I was gonna say too is these movies do not care about continuity anymore.
Oh yeah,
which is good in my opinion. A lot of people in the Transformers fandom and the forums have been like trying to figure out, is this a sequel to Bumblebee? Is it not?
Yeah, I
I'm
asked
just
you that
like-
when we first talked about it.
And I'm like, they don't care. Like the guys, they don't care. You shouldn't care either. And I did like they gave the one nod to Bumblebee in this.
Yep.
That was a great line.
Yeah, I know you worked with some humans before.
Yeah, I was like, he's like, I know human treated you well or whatever, and it was like touching for a moment to remind you of like his relationship with Charlie, and then that's it. Like, move
Done.
on. If you've never seen that movie, you didn't understand that line, and that's it. That's all there is.
Which is I think really admirable, because like we live in this time of like every IP has to be super connected. And we'll get to the thing I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But like everything has to be a franchise. Everything has to be like a universe.
Yeah.
And except for Marvel, like that mostly fails.
Yes.
Like it's because they did it slowly and carefully, and then everyone, like Dark Universe tried to do it, DCEU tried to do it, none of it worked.
Yeah.
You know, and I like this one. It's just like I like that you should be able to show up to a movie and be like, I like Transformers, or like actually my friend likes, I don't know it that well. It's all contained.
Yeah.
There's no previous research you got to do. You don't have to watch the Disney Plus mini series to be like, oh, like it's like. And it's not super Easter eggy either. Like it's I feel like it's a trip. It's like for fans, but it's not like at the expense of story.
Right. Yeah. The stuff in this movie is like Unicron's theme is actually reusing the 1986 theme.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could hear it. Probably no one else in the theater could. And it's like, I was elated by it, and that's it. Yeah.
And then even like for the movies, like going into the original Jablonski theme at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, and I think that's a really great theme. It's
it
like,
is. Yeah.
That was a Hans Zimmer light. You know, I always like Steve Jablonski. Like, we couldn't afford Hans Zimmer.
Oh man, that's gonna make some Transformers fans upset. But yeah,
but it's true. I'm sorry.
No, I get it. I agree.
He totally is. You know?
I agree. Yes. Well, we were just talking about Jablonski. Oh yeah, how it's cool that this was like a closed universe. Yeah,
closed loop.
But of course, it was not a totally closed universe. So we got the G.I. Joe call at the end. So tell us, G.I. Joe expert, tell us about it.
I am a cynical jerk, and I am tired of a lot of IP filmmaking. I am like, when they try to, like, I mean, for instance, The Flash comes out next week, and like my favorite film growing up for like 10 years was Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah. And
like Keaton being the new Flash, I'm like, I kind of couldn't care less, and that's bad.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm your demographic, and I, from everything about Ezra Miller and everything of the DCEU, I'm like, this whole thing is tainted.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm like, don't try to like trick me into coming to your movie. But you get to the end of this film, and it's technically the last scene.
Yeah.
And it still is kind of like a stinger. Like it's like it ends with his brother, and then it's kind of like, oh, and one more thing.
Yeah.
You know? And he goes into this interview, and it turns out it's like he's talking to some kind of government agent. And I was like, we both thought it was Sector 7. Right.
Yeah.
We're like, this is going to be, and I was like, here, I'll just get to it. Sector 7, you know, which I think they did on purpose. Right. You know,
maybe, yeah.
And he puts this card down. He's like, if you ever need anything, call us. This agent puts this card down, and he flips it, and it's G.I. Joe. And like, my brain took like a long time to process it. And then I started flipping out. Like, I turned to Brandon. I'm like, G.I. Joe, oh my God. And I was like completely, and I have not done that in years. So like that alone was like awesome.
Yeah.
And I texted my brother, and like, he's like, yeah, I heard that. He goes, I'm so excited. And what I'm hoping, and we talked obviously with the comic books, I think it's IDW that does those, right?
A lot of people have had the Transformers license, but there was like a Marvel run, IDW run.
Yeah, I think.
But there's definitely G.I. Joe Transformers crossovers.
Yeah,
I don't know who they were.
I forget
under.
who that was.
I think it was Marvel, but someone in the comments will say it.
But yeah, and it's really like, and that stuff's really good. And what I'm hopeful about is that I really like this 90s fun, cartoony, more again like kid friendly world to put G.I. Joe into. Like the first one in Rise of Cobra, and I saw it 3 times in the theater. My brother and I both we're big enough fans that it's like, we'll go, you know.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's bad. It is bad. And then I love Retribution. I think it's really, really good. But it still, I think, leans more realistic at times. It just, you know, and it has the hiss tank, so it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But
well, it's a product of that time, like we were saying. Everything had to be grounded.
More grounded.
Had to impress you with how it grounded the IP into the real world.
Exactly. And but this, I'm like, wow, if you introduced G.I. Joe into like this kind of 90s world. My brother was texting me, he was like, it should be fun. It should not be militaristic. It should be cartoony laser guns, like not machine guns. Like, let's just lean into this, you know, like let's go all the way and like make it fun and not, because I think G.I. Joe is a really hard IP to crack now, because how do you not make it super right wing?
Right.
You know what I mean? Again, I keep being political, but you know what I mean? Like how do you not make it that?
Yeah.
You know,
how do you
just
make
being
it
like,
not feel like it has an agenda of some sort or something.
Exactly. When it just should be a fun, like it should just be like
a Saturday morning cartoon that it's like,
versus Cobra.
I watched this because they're good guys being cool and bad guys being cool in bad guy ways.
Exactly. I don't want to see the history of the Army Rangers. I just want to see Beachhead kick some butt.
Yeah.
You know, and swing on wires and like ninjas, and like I want a better Snake Eyes than we ever got.
Yeah.
You know, I want Storm Shadow.
And I feel like the fact that like the tone you're describing is almost like proven by the fact that they're willing to put this reveal at the end of this movie, like in the precedent that this movie set, because it's similar, like what you're saying about how the action should be in G.I. Joe. I feel like this movie kind of took the same direction with Transformers, in the sense that the Bay movies, the Transformers, the Decepticons will die by like jets and military stuff. In this one, it was only Transformer on Transformer fight. Like the military could have come in and clean up Scourge in like 2 minutes or whatever. Maybe.
Yes.
Unless he had some vague Unicron power or whatever. But it also really leaned into like what I personally really love about Transformers, which is just like the visceral giant robot metal on metal action. Like I love just the first 2 times Optimus transforms in this movie.
Oh, it's great.
It treats it with such reverence, and it's like, look at this big guy like hulking in with his big footsteps. I'm like, yes, it's a big Optimus Prime. I love it. And then like when he fights Scourge and they're like, you know, turning a corner at 50 miles per hour, and then he like transforms, does a barrel roll and smashes into him. I'm like, they get it. Like they get why this franchise is cool. Like it's just like how in some superhero movies like the X-Men Origins, where you have Deadpool and it's like you took away everything that made Deadpool cool to me. It's like there are moments in that in Transformers, like where Starscream dies by Sam's little weapon. I'm like, dude, Starscream's this like super cool jet. Even in these same movies, he was super cool in the first ones, and then you just took everything away from that. But it's like in this one,
Kingdom.
They always understood what made Transformers cool at that level to me too. Like Optimus Prime was this big awesome gorilla, like he always did his like gorilla stuff, and Rhinox did like the roar, and Cheetor's like running like a fast like a cheetah or whatever. So yeah, I feel like they get that. I feel like they'll get it.
And the momentum, I think, of like the beasts, like it's so like I think like the scale was really good in this.
Yes,
sense of scale, and the sense of again of like the weight.
Yeah,
and I think a film that does it well also is like Pacific Rim. The first one
yes.
is like Del Toro is like I remember watching this whole making of where he's like, no, like there's certain things you do to show like they don't move like humans do, because when you're that heavy, you move more slowly.
Yeah,
it's just like physics, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so
it's,
and this has more of that versus the Michael Bay films.
Yeah,
there's weight.
It has a balance of the right weight too, because you also have like an RC in this one was like doing backflips and stuff, so
it's quicker.
Like, it respects like okay, like you know, it's a mix. It's like they're heavy when they need to be, they have that weight when they need to be, but they're also like kind of cool. There's a ninja transformer who's like
sleek.
ninja like or whatever, like sleek when they need to be, because they're not all just a bunch of big hulking robots or whatever, which is I think they really got that in this movie, and I hope they'll get it in the G.I. Joe movie.
Do
you think they'll add other IP to the universe?
Wasn't there? Who else was the other one?
The other stuff is always Max or something like that. MAX. What is that?
Action Max? No,
something like that. I don't know. I'm not really familiar.
Yeah, I mean those are the two big boys are
G.I. Joe
and Transformers, and then. Well, I know that Hasbro, they now own Monopoly, and they were going to do a Monopoly movie, I know, as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And and obviously they did Battleship, which I remember when they announced that, people were like, how are you going to do that?
Yeah. And
that was so outside.
Did that have a sequel set up in it?
I think.
But it never came to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the movie was Battleship by name only.
Right.
Like there's only the one moment.
There's the one scene in the beginning where you see the radars.
Yes, or they're like, we have to go by like do the math and like go down like the columns and the rows. It's it's like my favorite,
which is hilarious.
Up. It's so funny, but like that movie also is very Michael Bay
Totally.
I mean,
it was
like that's
100%.
Peter Berg just doing Michael Bay.
There was
so.
a lot of movies in that era that were just like, let's take that Transformers formula and run with it, baby.
Hell yeah.
Like, let's do it.
It works.
Yeah. I'm curious if they'll throw in anything else. I hope they sort of take their time with it and don't try to make the next installment like do everything. Like, I hope it doesn't have like the entire G.I. Joe team plus the entire Transformers team plus the introduction of Megatron plus the introduction of Cobra or something. Like.
Yeah.
I was a little iffy when I first found out Unicron was going to be in this. I was like,
how?
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, are you guys like? I know hopefully the team is like excited to do right by the franchise, try something new, but don't try to do everything all at once. Like Beast Wars and Unicron, like, but it worked. It worked fine. Unicron was just like the looming big bad that can stay around for another sequel.
Yeah.
And I was actually kind of hoping for the fan service of a Megatron tease at the end of like the Decepticons are out there and they're gonna come after this planet next, but it didn't happen. But
well, and I'm excited to see this version of Megatron.
Yes, me too.
You
Yeah,
know?
yes.
And I feel like this is gonna do well.
I hope so.
It feels. I mean, the one problem is you have. I mean, it's summer.
It's crowded.
And like Spider-Verse was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just last week. And then we have Flash. I don't think Flash is going to do very well, honestly.
Yeah.
And then Indiana Jones, I don't think is going to do well either.
Mm.
This has, I mean, besides Spider-Man, I think this has the possibility of having some legs.
Really? Yeah.
You know?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think it'll have good word of mouth just among like fans like us who are like, it's fresh. Like even if you're burnt out on the Bay films,
Yeah.
that would be like my one message, maybe to splice this at the beginning is, even if you're burnt out of Bay films, but you like Transformers at all, this is fresh. Like go see it. It's a Transformers film that you might be waiting for, and it's finally here. Like,
or just you're just done with IP movies.
Yeah.
In general, because I think like just I'm also hesitant. Like I probably wouldn't have gone tonight if it weren't for you. And I'm like, but I like to see movies with friends who like are into what we're seeing, so like I can do vicarious through that. So it's like that makes me enjoy it more. But I actually ended up just having a good time myself. And from the beginning, I'm like, oh, I like that they're doing this '90s thing, and I like that it's like more character based, weirdly. And there's honestly at the same time not too many Transformers. Like that's the problem with the Bay films too. There's like 900 Transformers in each movie.
Yeah, I thought this was a well balanced cast. It was really interesting that Bumblebee was just kind of there, but it was smart in the sense that like he's the one who's been the focus all this time. So
I love that.
Yeah, you got the weight of like, oh, I know this character kind of, so I'm invested in the fact that he's the one in danger or whatever. But you got a new character to be the human companion, and
we get Mirage.
Yeah,
like, we can't. I mean, Pete Davidson voices Mirage, and he's great.
Yeah.
And a lot of people before I went, everyone's like, he's one of the best parts. He is one of the best parts.
Yes.
And we were talking about how like Bumblebee. The problem with the other films is like Bumblebee is mostly silent, like or he's talking through like radio voice or movie voice, and it's like you can't build a relationship with that way. But he and Mirage actually have Noah and Mirage have a very like reciprocal, like fun relationship that I actually cared when things happen.
Yeah, and I love the relationship too between Mirage and Optimus. It was
totally.
It reminded me a lot of actually from Transformers Armada. You have Hotshot, who is basically like he was literally just Hasbro being like, we don't have Bumblebee as a trademark right now, so we need another.
Does that really happen?
Yeah, because Bumblebee's a generic word, so they like had lost it at that time. They didn't.
I never knew that.
So they used Hot Rod in Japan, but in US they didn't have Hot Rod either because that's also generic.
Yeah.
So they had Hot Shot. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and Hot Shot acted just like Mirage in this, like a hothead guy that had a bond with the human character who's like a similar guy, and then he acted as like the bridge between Optimus and the human to be like, Optimus, you have to like let this guy in, and Optimus is like, fine or whatever. He unlocks like the caring side of Optimus for the human. So I was really excited to see that. It felt like this was pretty well informed of the spirit of Transformers across the franchise, I think. Like it tapped on, you got Unicron, you've got Beast Wars, obviously. You have that kind of the Unicron trilogy, which is Armada, Energon, Cybertron, like those kinds of feelings from it, as well as the original Generation 1 show, of course, with like Peter Cullen as Optimus. So I was overall happy with it. There was a moment where Unicron's drones were flying out, the little balls. I thought they were references to his Minicon from Armada. I was about to lose my mind if they turned into that Minicon, but then they just turned into the little generic monsters. I was about to lose it, but I still loved it. I still loved it overall. Yeah.
Well, and Stephen Caple Jr., who made it, like, he also did Creed 2, which I like a lot. I'm a big fan of the Rocky series, and I think he's got a future. I mean, like it'd be even beyond the. I know a lot of times with when it comes to IP filmmaking and big CGI filmmaking, a lot of times the bigger scenes are basically directed by your VFX supervisor, right?
Yes,
I mean, like Marvel's definitely that's the definition of like, hey, Peyton Reed, go help Paul Rudd make some jokes, and then we'll take care of everything else, right? And there's a lot of this, especially early on, that is not Transformer centric, and if it is, like it's a car chase, so it's like he killed it, like it's really good, and there's a lot of energy to it, like all her stuff, at the museum, everything with him and like his brother and the way it's shot, and it has this kind of like do the right thing, like kind of like Spike Lee's New York. I was like, and the music obviously too. I'm like, this is great. Like it adds a lot of like just like actual like texture to the movie.
Which it took its time,
which you don't get with the base stuff.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of in Civil War. I always say like one of the things that overall, I wish it didn't try to stuff so many characters into it, because I felt like it was just a showcase. It was just
Spider-Man,
But given that they had to put Spider-Man in there, I like that they took their time with him. Like there's the scene where Tony meets him is like long. Like it takes a long. It feels like he was just started watching another movie, but it makes it worthwhile. It makes him feel worthwhile instead of just like popping out of nowhere.
And it feels like New York too, which you need with Spider-Man.
Exactly. Yeah. So this did the same thing where there was like 20 minutes in, I was like, wow, I still haven't seen a single Autobot yet. But that's good. It makes it worth it. It pays off for the character.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff like that too. I mean, like I love, not to bring up Creed again, but like there's a moment in the first Creed where you don't hear the Rocky theme the whole movie until he gets up after being knocked down in that final scene, and it's like if you make people wait for the thing, it actually has an impact. And I felt the same way when the Maximals actually finally transformed.
Like when he said maximize, I was like,
and I was like, I honestly I didn't know these forces as well. I'm like, I thought, do they transform? And then I was like, oh my god! Like, and it was like they made you wait for it. It was like save something for the end, right? Like,
totally.
And it's like this film got that. It wasn't just like, oh, we don't want them to leave. Let's just give them to it all now, every minute, and hope they love it. You know. And this was like,
or the first time Optimus transformed and stuff. Like that was a great entrance. It had the reverence that I wanted from.
And the weight.
As soon as that happened, I was like, okay, this movie respects like this character and the legacy this character has for people.
Was that because that's the shot where it happens behind? He's walking behind trucks.
And like you don't. And it's like, what else is this besides obviously Optimus Prime, the truck coming in?
Oh, so
but
cool.
It still treats it like you would like someone coming out of the shadows or whatever, like a human, like how you shoot a guy who's you're trying to like build up the tension for, right? Like it's like.
Or Scourge, the first time you meet him.
He's
walking out of the shadows of this forest.
And that looks great.
He's like glowing chest. I'm like, this is awesome. Like they're actually like putting like atmosphere in this movie and holding out.
To your point about like how a lot of movies are basically just made by the visual effects, like the previous team, like that felt like if it was the previous team, they did a great job. But it felt like how someone would actually shoot like a person, like how a director would think about like, you're over there. We're going to use like the DP is going to think about the right lens to give you like the depth in the forest and stuff. We're going to obscure you with this light or whatever. Like it felt like it was really there and like it was captured. Like it was almost like there were a couple shots in that felt like almost Avatar level. Like you could feel the director's hand in it. You know, like you could feel the hand of someone respecting like what the CG was about.
No, I love that's a great point. So I mean, you brought up Quantumania earlier. It keeps kind of coming up, but it's like it's just like that represents the fall of that type of filmmaking.
The pit.
It's the pit. That's as bad as it can get. And I know there's obviously like it's not to rip on the VFX artists, but like they were obviously pulled. It's not their fault.
It's
Marvel's fault. You know, it's like Disney's fault for doing that. But it's like this is what happens when you try to streamline the filmmaking process. When you try to say like we're just gonna have people stand in front of green screens, it's like, and then we'll figure it out later. It will fail eventually. I'm glad it did.
Me too.
And to have this, even to watch this film, and it's like wow, like, and also like everything looks great. Like everything looks so textured and like physical. And I think a lot of it too, versus compared to a lot of the other films, like it takes place in nature. Like the second half is very much like in these greens, and like the way the Maximals stand out and like live in that like lush Peru landscape, like really works well.
Yeah, totally.
There's a color scheme, like you said.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Every character pops too. Every character has a distinct. Yeah,
Yep.
it's back to that. Yeah, the Bayhem really loved just like the madness of a city juxtaposed against the madness of the robots, just to like
Yeah.
maximize, burn your senses to the ground to be like,
Totally.
look, it's gray Shockwave with this giant worm monster covered in the debris of a falling building with
Yeah.
sparks flying everywhere in the smoke, and just like even that scene in Dark of the Moon where Optimus comes down and has the heroic music and he like tears through like 30 Decepticons. I still can't tell you what any of them look like. I
No.
can tell you like as a mega fan who's like slowed it down, I can be like the model for Long Haul is in there, and the model for this one Constructicon is in there. And I can't tell you how they were like standing or what he did to grab them. Like I just know the Optimus model passed by them, sparks fly, and then he ends up over here and you see the model on the ground. Like it's like utter madness, incomprehensible.
I like that this one, and you get your big mayhem or even bayhem kind of ending to this with like the craziness of, but it's still like you have your like your faceless army that you get in Marvel movies, which you didn't get usually in the other films.
Yeah,
it's usually like big Transformer versus big Transformer.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, let's give some like kind of disposable things to tear up, and I'm like, that works.
Yeah, it worked.
You know, a sky beam and some faceless.
Yeah, and you still had Optimus versus Scourge to me, which was the meat of the impact. And then there were a couple of moments where there's like a moment in when Scourge first encounters Optimus in Prue where he does like a slow motion punch to the face, and you have like an anime like sound effect there, like and I was like, great, like that got me so hyped for the rest of the action in the movie. I was like, this just gets like. It seemed like it was drawing on so many influences to deliver the best action for the right moment. You know, like
totally.
We have Bayhem behind us, which is just the max chaos and sensory overload. But then you have like anime, which is all about like clarity and of the hits and the momentum and stuff. And that's kind of, I think, one thing I like about Transformers these days is like it has a lot of breadth. Like you have these like the War for Cybertron, where it's like the grit of a gritty Cybertron. They're all like in burning fire in the metal cities, and then you have the Maximals who are in nature and like grills and stuff, and then you have the mixtures of like the anime that are like anime inspired and stuff. So I feel like this is how it should be done. It's like the mix that they employed in this movie. Like honor it all, mix it whatever feels right for the moment, kind of thing.
No, totally. And it's again not a huge like I didn't need a lot from this movie, you know. And I feel like I might represent more of the general audience.
Yeah.
And it's like I think if people go, they're gonna have a good time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think like if that's why I hope it has legs, because again, selfishly, I want that G.I. Joe movie.
Yeah.
Like I'll go see this 3 more times if that helps.
Heck yeah.
You know, Hasbro and Paramount, I'm your dude. I'll be there.
Yes.
Also, I'm a screenwriter. I'll help you write that script, dude. My brother and me, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I'll handle the Transformers parts.
We got it. Look no further, man.
All right, sweet. I think that's where we should end it. Go see this movie. Give us a sequel. G.I. Joe sequels, Transformers sequels. Stay tuned to my channel for more Transformers stuff.
Check out Secret Handshake Cinema. We're on Spotify and wherever you can find podcasts. And appreciate you having me, Brandon. This is fun.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Martin.
All right.